I think it's a big step even to start to write your goals down. But then the next big step is, what commitments are you going to make consistently to make that big goal?
If you don't have that clear target, one, you don't have something to aim for. You also say yes to too many things that aren't leading to that target. Hey, welcome to a podcast where dreams meet determination and success is just around the corner. I'm your host, Suzanne Taylor King, and I'm here to help you unlock the full potential of your business and your life. Welcome to Unlock Your Way with STK. Let's unlock your path to success together. Good morning, everyone. Suzanne Taylor King here for another Friday live episode of Unlock Your Way with STK. And you're going to love today's conversation. We are here with Coach Jim Johnson, a legendary high school basketball coach whose one act of leadership turned into one of the most unforgettable sports moments of our time. He's known for putting Jason J. McElwain, an autistic team manager, into the game, only to watch him score 20 points in 4 minutes. Coach Johnson's decision became a global symbol of courage, compassion, belief, and he's now a sought-after speaker, author, leadership mentor who had 22 winning seasons out of 23, and we're going to get into it today. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm looking forward to this. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I always share how I met someone because I think people are fascinated by the fact that I can message someone or run into someone at Starbucks and end up in a relationship. And what I think is really cool, I was at a conference about 6 weeks ago where there was a speaker by the name of Jim Johnson. And we hit it off. I wanted to have him on my podcast. I looked him up on LinkedIn and found you, Coach Jim Johnson. And I looked at your LinkedIn profile and I read a little bit about you. And I said, what the heck? I'm messaging this Jim Johnson too because he sounds awesome. And you were receptive to having a conversation and being here on this show. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'll tell you a real quick funny story. So obviously Jim Johnson is somewhat of a common name.
Yeah.
But probably I would say in the sport world, there's two very famous Jim Johnsons, although they go by Jimmy Johnson. One would be the former Dallas Cowboys coach and then the NASCAR driver as well. So, yeah. But I'll tell you, I spoke in Dallas a number of years ago. And back then I was actually getting picked up by somebody and they had a sign, Coach Jim Johnson. And he had a huge line there because he thought it was the former Dallas Cowboys coach. So unfortunately, I disappointed the crowd when it was me. So.
Well, I'm sure no one will be disappointed today because we had a really great conversation last time we talked. And today I want to dive into leadership, a little bit of legacy, and you have this amazing legacy you've created for yourself and that inner conviction that you have. And, I think the most important takeaway here is the courage required, even when nobody is watching, to do some of the things that you've done, winning seasons, turning around, I believe, 3 losing teams in your career.
Yep.
Yeah. And is it because of your philosophy, your leadership, or do you just have a vision for a team?
Well, I'll start by sharing a quick story because at the beginning of my career, I didn't have any of those, although I thought I did. So my dream, my dad was my high school basketball coach. So he was my hero growing up. And so I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And so when I left college and I wanted to get in to be a teacher of phys ed, and I also wanted to be a coach, but a varsity basketball coach was my one dream. And actually, I became a varsity coach very early in my career at 25, which is pretty young. And I had been a successful junior varsity coach for a couple of years. So I thought I had it all figured out. And of course, I led that team to 17 consecutive, yes, you guessed it, losses. And I was on an interim position. And I ended up, as I kid people in my presentations, I didn't like what the administration had to say to me at the end of the year. And of course, they said to me, we're going with someone else. Or in other words, you're fired.
Yeah.
It actually, I think we all have our pains in our lives, adversities, as you said. And, initially I wanted to blame everybody else. I was kind of guided that I thought I would come back and it didn't work out that way. But it probably ended up being the best experience for two main reasons I want to share with your audience. One is it put a burn in my belly that never went away, that I was going to prove that I could be a successful coach. And number two, it opened up an arrogant young 25-year-old that realized I had a lot to learn. And I started in my study of leadership. And that helped me immensely. And I got a break. The next year, I ended up being an assistant coach at a junior college. And little did I know, Suzanne, his name was Bill Van Gundy. And at that time, his sons one was my age and one was a couple years younger. And they ended up both being head coaches in the NBA. So there's a pretty good pedigree between learning from Coach Van Gundy and then really my own study. And I got back into the high school. And as you mentioned, I took over 3 programs after that had all been losing. Unfortunately, we did much better. And a lot of it had to do with, I developed these leadership keys that I really live by to try to help me be a successful leader. And now I'm fortunate I share those leadership lessons quite a bit around the country.
Well, what I think is really the key takeaway for me in that story is that the failure piece lit the fire in your belly, right? And, I think you have over 400 wins?
Yeah.
And so when you think about that, what do you think was the most pivotal personal development, leadership, knowledge that helped you with that?
I would say early in my career was the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. In fact, I got a chance to speak for Franklin Covey, and unfortunately, it was after Dr. Covey had passed. But one of the things he talked about in the 7 Habits book was getting clarity of who you are, that you're having your own personal mission. Yeah. And that was something that I had never even heard of, let alone have one. And it's funny because I ask that question a lot now. How many of you have, and when I'm speaking to a business next week, and it'll be interesting because I probably get a very small percentage that will raise their hand and say, I have a personal mission statement in writing. But that helped me immensely because I always share with leaders, if you don't stand for something, you fall for everything. And so I started to think about it, and I give people some ideas of how it helped me, but how I also came to it. And one of the things is I ask this question a lot to myself: why was I put on this earth? But I'm a person of faith, so why did God put me on this earth? And I started really doing a lot of thinking. And when I really got clarity, I have a personal mission statement in writing, but it helped me really. My mission statement is to be an outstanding role model that makes a positive difference in the world by helping others make their dreams come true. And the thing I encourage people is I believe your personal mission has got to be something bigger than yourself. Yeah. And, as I talk to leaders in business and leaders of athletic teams, it's got to be more than making profit or winning games, although both of those are important. And, if you don't win games, after a while, they probably don't bring you back. And if you don't make money in business, you don't have a business, right? But I think if it's not bigger, then you don't last. And that was the one, when I got clarity, that's why I think I was able to last for quite a while and then have quite a bit of success after that initial thing. So I think, I always share with people, the first person you got to lead is yourself. And once you can get that, then I'll say one other thing now, and we can delve more into leadership lessons. But the second piece for me is getting clarity of how you can build trust with your team. And we can delve into that more deeply. But I think that's essential. If you're going to be a leader, people got to trust you. So.
Agreed. And I think these are, not only sports lessons, they are business lessons. I would argue parenting lessons, dating lessons. There's so many similarities here.
Yes.
And when I talk to entrepreneurs and they don't have a mission or a vision or where they would like to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I think it's one of the most powerful things to help people see that when they haven't imagined that yet.
Yes.
What do you use when that comes into play for you? What does that look like, helping somebody see that vision when they can't see it yet?
Well, I think to delve in a little deeply is I think you have to really figure out who you are. So one of the other steps I share with people is I think you have to have clarity of your core values. All right. And then the clarity of, what are your most important goals? We did a lot of work with our players in goal setting. And, we always talked about when you think it, ink it. We gave them a whole process of how we help them with their goals, both individually and a team. And I think so getting them to think about what they want. And then the other important part about goals is I think it's a big step even to start to write your goals down. But then the next big step is really giving a plan of action of what commitments are you going to make consistently to make that big goal. And that's where when I started to develop these processes and systems to be a better basketball coach, those are things that are, as you said, pertinent, whether you're running a family or running a business, any kind of leadership, you're working with people, is you got to have processes and systems. And it starts with clarity of mission, as you mentioned, and then clarity of where do you want to go? Is the famous Zig Ziglar quote, if you don't have a target, you can't hit it, right? So,
yeah, I love there's a stoic kind of philosophy about having clear targets that if you don't have that clear target, one, you don't have something to aim for.
Right.
You also say yes to too many things that aren't leading to that target. And I notice this over and over again with companies and entrepreneurs, especially.
Right.
But in the sports world, I think what's interesting is this concept of flow. When you have a clear target and you know yourself, you know your athletic abilities, you can actually push that. And I think unknowingly, you were really good at that. And what did that look like? Did the vision come first for the players, or was it more discipline and practice and the actual sports of it all?
Well, I think you have to have, a big vision. You could say the famous BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. Something that you're really striving for. Now, the path to get to that goal is not a straight path. There's a lot of bumps and bruises and ups and downs and going right and going left. And so in figuring that big, vision, mission, big goal is the having clarity of developing processes, because you have to develop consistency. As we always used to talk to our players, and it's the same in business, you got to be good in the basics, all right? The fundamentals, the things each day. And as a leader, one of the things because I speak to both businesses and I do a lot of educational groups, because that's where I always spoke to a group of educators in Kansas a couple of weeks ago. And, I kidded them that the 3 hours in education is not reading, arithmetic and writing. It's relationships. And we forget that sometimes. Building those relationships and then teaching your people of how they can be really good in the fundamentals, whether it's basketball or the business or whatever you're trying to do. all of those have fundamentals that you have to become as good as you can if you're going to, reach those big goals.
Yeah, I relate, business fundamentals very much like sports. And so many entrepreneurs want to offload those fundamentals in the beginning. They want to have somebody else come up with the content or the getting the clients, whether it's lead gen or, having a salesperson.
Right.
And I often feel as though the ones who learn all of that themselves almost become better delegators, better leaders, better knowing what their company needs versus listening to every person who's trying to sell them something.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because, the more that you can experience things and be willing to do the things, just to be a great example. One of my 7 leadership keys is being a great role model for people. And that means, I wasn't afraid even at the end of my career to sweep the gym floor or to pick up a piece of trash off because you do still want to set the example. But I also understand to do something really big, as the leader, you can't be spending all your time cleaning the gym because that's not your main role. But people want to know that you're there, that you will go down in the trenches with them. It's just like helping, if you're teaching, working with salespeople, to go on calls with them and help them and give them feedback and ask them a lot of questions. Like, a couple of things I think with leaders, I'm big of acronyms because we did a lot in education where I think the best leaders now are the CQAs, the chief question askers.
Yeah.
And then, building that, that vision for what's the future is I believe leaders got to be the CST, which is the chief storytellers. And one of the things that I think I got quite good at as I progressed in my career is I was always teaching our players through stories. And I used a lot of stories of both warnings and examples.
Yeah.
And because I would bring up an example like, how come this professional player, he has great statistics, but his team never wins? And then we'd have a discussion about why is that? And then I'd bring up, 2 days later, hey, I want to share another story. How about this player? He has good statistics too, but his team wins. What's the difference? And that's where you're teaching and getting them to realize what it takes to be successful and what the goals are. So
I love that so much because I think storytelling is one of the things that I had an unconscious ability when I first became an entrepreneur. And it came from my dental career, believe it or not. I worked with a lot of young children and, they're fearful at the dentist. And it was always about a story or being entertaining or, I think that's that friendly, safe feeling. And I got used to being that person for people. And it's really helped my career tremendously.
Right.
I think I'm most curious for you, the moment of inclusion that really created a ripple effect in your career with Jason.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about that and what prompted that inclusion, number one, and the courage required to do that, I'm sure, in front of a gym full of people.
Yeah. So, I'll just give you a quick backstory to give everyone context. So, Jason came into our program as a sophomore. He tried out for the junior varsity. I was the varsity coach. And I got to give a lot of credit to my JV coach. He came in during tryouts a few days in and he said, Coach, we have this young man. And we had a few ingredients of what we were looking for with the right players on our team. And certainly talent was one of them. We don't want players that can't play basketball
Right.
on a basketball team. But we had some other things that were really important. And one of them was the passion of the game and the love of being a we over me guy. So
Yeah.
to give you context, my JV coach came into the office. He says, I have this young man trying out for the team. His name is Jason McElwain. He's on the autism spectrum. He's very small in stature. He's like 5'6", 90 pounds. He's not very good at basketball. But coach, he has this big heart and he just loves the guys on the team. And I think we should keep him in the program. I said, well, what you got in mind? He says, I'm going to have him practice with the team every day, but he's our team manager. And that's how it all started. And then I was starting to get to know him. In fact, I tagged him the nickname J-Mac because I couldn't pronounce his last name. In fact, you pronounced it pretty well. Most people butcher it. In fact, I kid people that if butchering his last name was a misdemeanor, I would have been on death row.
Oh, wow.
I could not pronounce his last name. So I tagged the nickname. And fortunately, it was a win-win because he liked the nickname. And now I didn't have to say his last name. And so,
Pretty smart.
Yeah. So I got to know him some, that year because he, in our situation, the JV and varsity usually played back to back. So he would sit on the bench for both games. Mm-hmm. But after that season is where our relationship blossomed because he started to come to all our off season. I was picking him up from his house and we were always talking basketball. And so, but unfortunately he didn't grow until after high school. So his senior year, he was like 5'9". 115 pounds. So he's very small. And we had a pretty talented program. So, but the key thing was him that I really try to share this powerful message with people is that he deserved an opportunity because he was willing to put the work in. He came every day. And the other thing is he had this infectious attitude. I used to give my team a quote every day. One of my favorite quotes is attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth fetching? And Jason's was. And so he tried out. He's the first young man, and actually the only young man in my 30 years as a head coach that ever tried out 3 years in a row without making it. But his senior year, I had this special place in my heart because I love the kid. I said, Jason, I still want you to serve as our team manager, but for your senior season, I want to give you a gift. And the gift is for senior night, the final home game where we honor the seniors. I want to give him a uniform and hopefully get you in the game. And I kid people that he would periodically ask me about the uniform during the season. And of course, I define periodically as about every other day. He was pretty pumped up about that. But again, we went through some real adversity. And, the book I wrote about it, that was my first keynote called Dreams Really Do Come True. The book is called A Coach and a Miracle. And it's been out for a while, but I shared all the backstory. It's too long a story, but the bottom line is our team was supposed to be really good his senior year. And we started out 2-0, and then we went through some funk because the team got divided. And I always share to people, think about a team that you were on that was divided.
Yeah.
Reach your potential. And, almost everybody says no. And we were no different. In fact, we lost 3 out of our next 5 games in that. And I was beside myself. But fortunately, we had an epiphany over our Christmas break. We were in a Christmas tournament and we were playing at the biggest high school in Rochester. It was called Fairport. And we won in the open round, but we still didn't play very well. And in the second round, this team Fairport was really good. They beat a team by 40 points that we had barely beaten 2 weeks earlier. So the next day we had a short practice because it was during Christmas break called a shoot around, in which we usually bring in our players for about an hour and we do some shooting drills and go over some plays and get ready for the game. But I knew I'd do something different because that wasn't going to be the formula. So I shocked him. I didn't bring any basketballs out. I sat him down and I said to him, guys, I don't want to go to the game tonight. And they kind of looked at me in disbelief. What do you mean? I said, well, unless we decide we're going to unite, we're going to lose by 50 points tonight. And then I brought up a little bit about, look at J-Mac, how much he's a comedy. He'll do anything for the team, but right now we don't have that. So I tried to inspire a little bit. But the best thing I did, and something I really encourage you as a leader, and something I really improved, but wasn't that great until that season, as I became a much better listener and I became vulnerable. And I said to him, guys, I don't have the answer, but you do. You got to be willing to share how we can get this team united. And I waited. It seemed like 2 minutes. It was probably 30 seconds, and somebody shared an idea. And by the end of that hour, we had never brought a basketball out, but everyone felt that at least they were heard. And it helped immensely. I wish I could say we won the game that night. We didn't, but we lost in overtime, and it showed what we could do. And then we went on a win streak, won, I think, 8 over the next 9 games going into senior night. And I don't know if you want me to take you through a little bit about senior night.
Yeah. Tell us about senior night.
Right. So senior night that year was February 15th. I gave Jason his first jersey on February 13th. In fact, he didn't care, even though it was so big. He was swimming in it. In fact, there was a rumor going around school that he slept in it for 2 straight nights. So, although he denies that rumor. But senior night, just for your listeners, that the way we did it is we would bring out all the senior players and the senior cheerleaders and their parents or guardians before the game, and we would honor each player. And it was profoundly touching, Suzanne, to see Jason instead of in his white shirt and black tie that he always wore to the games. He's now swimming in number 52, and to see him embrace his parents was a memory I will always cherish. Well, the game, I really wanted to get Jason in, but I knew I had to get all the other players in fairness. And so after 3 quarters, we got everybody in but Jason. So with just over 4 minutes, I thought the time was right. I turned, I pointed at him. He nearly ran on the court. He was so excited. Then he gets on the floor for the first time. And we had a good student body following. There's a big video that's I show a lot of my done by ESPN, like a 5-minute about the story. It's really powerful. But we had a really good student body following that year. But what I didn't know, what Jason didn't know, when Jason got on the basketball court for the first time, our student body, they called themselves the Sixth Man, they gave him a standing ovation. But what Jason and I didn't know, one of our parents made these pictures of Jason's face and put them on paint sticks. They were like Falco. And they showed the paint sticks. Well, Mr. Macho, me, I usually don't cry at basketball games.
I'm ready to cry right now.
Well, that's what happened. I sat down, which I rarely did during games, and tears are flowing down my face. I cannot believe how they brought or welcomed him into the game. So he's in the game. First time he touches the ball, he's got a 3-pointer from the right corner. He lets it go. I look around like everybody's standing up in anticipation, and Suzanne, it misses by like 6 feet. And I know you're not supposed to pray in the public schools, but I pray, dear God, please help him get one basket.
Yeah.
Next possession, we have we're on a fast break, and one of his teammates throws Jason the ball, and he has about a 10-foot shot. And this time he lets it go. It hits the backboard, hits the rim, and falls off. And the crowd groans. I'm thinking, all right, God's starting to listen. We're getting closer.
Yeah.
Third possession, he has another 3-pointer from the right wing. He lets it go. This time, magic. It goes in. The place erupts. And I'm thinking to myself, God must be a basketball fan. No, Jason scored. He's got a 3-pointer. It can't get better than this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long for the next 3 minutes, Jason's boyhood idol was the late, great Kobe Bryant. In fact, Jason used to sign his name, Jason J. Mac Kobe McMillan. That's how much he liked Kobe Bryant. Well, I'm going to fast forward, then I'll give you a couple last points about the game. 6 months after that game, Jason's at the ESPY Awards in California. He's up for the greatest sports moment of the year. And I kid you not, one of the other finalists is his idol, Kobe Bryant. Kobe had scored 81 points for the Lakers in a game that year. So he's up for the same award. Jason meets his idol and beats him out for the ESPY. Well, how did he do that? It wasn't just 1 3. He started making other baskets, and the place is just going bananas. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. The 2 things I'll never forget was about a minute ago, I'm still seeing on the bench. I'm shocked what I'm seeing, tears still flowing down my face. And I get a tap on my shoulder, and I'm shocked. I look behind me, and it's J-Mac's mother. And she whispers in my ear, Suzanne, Coach, this is the best gift you could ever give to my son. I got so choked up. I started crying harder. And then this is how the game ends. Spencer Porter, our opponent that night, I want to give kudos to their coach and their players. They were very good sports, but they score about 10 seconds to go. And our player that takes out of bounds normally throws it to our point guard. But this time he throws it to J-Mac. So J-Mac's dribbling down. It's almost like he's playing a drama because they were going to just let him go and make a short shot. He goes down and he pulls up for a 3-pointer. He's like 2 feet behind the arc. I'm like, Jason, don't shoot from there. You're going to ruin this moment. He launches this rainbow. Swish. I look over. the whole gym runs on the floor, including his teammates. And I'll never forget because our players put him up on on their shoulders with a game ball over his head. And I'll never forget because I had no idea how many points he had scored. And our public address announcer comes on and says, the leading scorer for Greece Athena tonight, J-Mac, with 20 points, including 6 3-pointers.
Wow.
I'll close this part by saying, because as a leader, you talk about the essence of teamwork is that we over me trying to get. Well, the great thing I love to share, because it was so touched my heart, was I never asked the 4 players on the court to pass Jason the ball. Yet on those last 4 minutes, out of their own hearts, they passed the ball to him every possession. Although I will say a sideline, I kid Jason still to this day because I still see him a lot. Jason, I'm still looking for your first assist. You didn't pass the ball once.
Well, he waited a long time to get his hand on that ball. So.
He as I one of my talks, I talk about the ability for carpe diem, the ability to seize the day, and he definitely seized the day for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's not often that I tear up. My son is 15. He's in 10th grade. He plays varsity volleyball. And he came to me and said he didn't get to play a whole lot this year, right? He played a lot of JV, but not a lot of varsity. Yeah. And it was an honor to make the team, and he got some time. Yep. Well, now most of the varsity team is seniors, and he said, I don't think I'm going to play next year. It was kind of boring being on the bench that much. And I said, you've worked 2 years to get to this point on the team, and you understand that next year you're going to play much, much more. Why don't you have a conversation with the coach? And I said, you're not switching. You can play something else as well if you would like. But, college wants to see consistency.
Right.
And he was like, I get it. And just the idea that he was going to mean more to the team next year because of how hard he's worked over that 2 years, it shifted a perspective.
Yeah.
For him. So I love what we're talking about. And from the place of being a mom, watching your child play sports, I'm sure it was absolutely incredible. Let's talk a little bit about the impact of moments like that. I'm sure there was others, but that ripple effect of emotion. Well, once someone is on a winning streak, there's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Once there's team cohesiveness and a shared mission and better teamwork, there's a ripple effect of impact of all of that. What do you think leaders today are underestimating about teamwork?
Well, I think it's something we spent a lot of time trying to learn about the people that were interested in playing our program. And we weren't perfect. It's not an exact science, but, we really, and I think why our program became very attractive because we were attracting the right type of people. And we over me. And I'll give you a quick story. So after that game, Jason becomes a global celebrity. I mean, that spreads all over the world. Yet he has to go back for our postseason. And just to give everyone context, at that point in my career as a coach, I was kind of known as the guy that won a lot of games during the regular season, but couldn't win the famous big one. I had taken 6 different teams to our postseason semifinals, never even making the finals. And so, but Jason embraced going back as team manager because he had to play in 6 regular season games to be on the postseason roster. And he embraced that. And the crazy thing is, Suzanne, with his kind of going back and showing the importance of being a we person and putting the team first, we ended up winning our first championship that year. And it just really, I think the more that you can get people on your team to buy in about putting the team first and then using them as great examples.
Yeah.
Going back to that famous storytelling, that story I told a lot to various teams, even teams that, because I coached for 10 more years. Now, Jason came back and volunteered as one of my volunteer assistants my last 8 years. So, but, people started to not know exactly who he was, but I would talk to him about, these are the sacrifices he made. First of all, get an opportunity. And then second of all, because the great little thing, I do this in one of my keynotes, a great lesson I learned from Jason was after his season, when he had his magical game and then we ended up winning our first sectional championship, was that, we got interviewed a lot by the media. And they would often ask him, what was the best thing about your senior season, expecting him to talk about his game. Yeah. And he would throw him a curveball because he'd say, winning the Section 5 championship, that was the best thing. And the funny thing is, it was just the opposite for me. I was fortunate after that, with Jason on my side we ended up winning 6 more championships. So we had quite a run my last decade. But the thing that I realized is the best thing that ever happened in my basketball coaching career was Jason's night. To me, that was the essence of what it's all about. So
yeah. Yeah. And I think when you are the type of person that wants to see other people succeed, wants to see other people in their moment and celebrates that and encourages that, I think that in itself is the definition of a great leader, someone who sees your abilities, your greatness, your skills, and actually encourages you to embrace that vision. So I just think what you do is amazing. And I think one of the things that I'm most curious about with leadership, so many people are chasing more. Like it's just, I got to win more. I have to do more, or,
right.
or more money or more material things. And you chased meaning. You chased that vision and that mission. And what did that give you as far as job satisfaction, or like, where did that leave you in that state?
Well, the biggest thing is when I got clarity, my mission was that, the things that really I feel the fruits of my labor is when when players reach back out to me, we get together, the best player I ever coached was my last year. He ended up, unexpectedly, he was a very good player, but I didn't even expect this. He ended up playing 2 years in the NBA. He now plays in Italy. But a couple of years after he graduated, he was playing at the University of Vermont, and I met him and my JV coach that took over for me. And he gave me a compliment that I'll cherish the rest of my life, because he was telling my JV coach that now is a head coach. The one thing I admired about Coach the most was I knew that he cared more about me as a player or as a person than he did as a player.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I really talk to leaders is, it's that old adage, but there's a lot of truth to it, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. Yeah. And I think when you can really do that, and that was something that I really tried to focus more on is caring. I was demanding. We expected, but I also talk to leaders, be demanding without being demeaning. Show that you care and that that you're going to try to add, because people want to get better. And as a coach, I wanted to get better. I think, if you're going to establish consistency, you can't stay the same because the world changes, right? And so that's where you got to keep growing yourself. But I think the ultimate for me is, that first trying to grow myself consistently, but then giving it to my team, my staff, and helping them grow to be the best they could be. I think that's, and you mentioned a little bit. I think the best leaders are the ones that not only care about the people, but are happy for those people's success. And that's much easier said than done. I know, Suzanne, when I was young in my career, I wasn't that much about happy for other people's success. I was trying to figure out how the heck I could be successful. But,
Yes. I think back my first business, I started at 22 or 23.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
And it was a massive success. And I made so much money at 23. I had no idea what to do with it.
Right.
And it was this place of abundance, but I had no appreciation for the abundance.
Yeah.
And so therefore I spent too much, partied too much, traveled too much. And, it was a great, fun time.
Right.
The business could have actually been a legacy, but the lessons you learn from screwing up, the lessons from spending too much or not knowing what you're doing have proved so valuable today, 40 years later. What does that look like for you? The wins, the losses for the future legacy of Coach Jim?
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things I encourage leaders that I started to do a lot is I think you should do autopsies on both your successes and your failures or losses, whatever you want to call that. Because, there's a lot of truth to the fact that you're going to probably learn more from defeat or, failure or whatever you want to, call it. People sometimes don't want to say anything about, a loss or a failure, but, let's face it, you do, because it wakes you up, when things don't go the way you want. But I think the other thing is in being an effective leader, you have to develop systems and processes, and you got to start figuring out what is working. And, you're always trying to tinker that. But there are some things, going back to one of our early thoughts about being great in the fundamentals and the basics, right? And so when you become great in the fundamentals, then you can it's just like in business. I think most times you have to niche down early on. And then, like I did one speech, I was trying to help people that their dreams come true, but I also love leadership. So as I did more speaking, I was like, there's other ways that I can give to people, like I do the presentation I'm doing next week is on how to build championship team culture. And we talk about one of the steps there is how do we recognize our people? And I give some ideas and get them to think about how they can do a better job of recognizing their people, which is essential to effective leadership.
Well, I love the awareness around self-awareness. If we're not aware of where we're succeeding or failing, then I don't know, repeating it in the future becomes, much more difficult. And I think I've been lucky to have a dad who was in the military and an athlete.
Yeah.
So what I got from that was always this strive for improvement, but also the reflecting on when something didn't work. And one of the most famous lessons from my dad was when I wasn't feeling like training, and I begged to cycle with him. He was a cyclist.
Okay.
I would beg to go on the bike ride. I want to go on the bike ride. He's like, no, it's not a bike ride. We're not going on a bike ride. And these 5 or 6 guys would come to our house. And my dad was probably late 40s. He was over 45. Okay. And the guys that he cycled with were between 25 and 40. And my dad was the rock star of the group. And I was 16 years old and why can't I go? Why can't Dad was like, we're not waiting for you. So, and I was kind of shocked. Like, what do you mean waiting for me? He said, until you can keep up, you can't go.
Right.
Because we're going to be 30 miles from home and you're not going to know where you are or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So I then had a goal to be able to keep up with my dad.
Yeah.
And we trained for that. And I asked him to train me for that. And I woke up one day and we were going to go out hill climbing. And he took the seat off my bike. And I looked at the bike. I said, what am I doing with this? He said, you'll be standing the whole time today.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, and this combination of being arrogant teenager and also very humbled in that moment, like, oh, this is going to be hard. And the skills that those lessons taught me about athleticism just carried over to other sports, swimming, snowboarding, surfing, all the things that I've participated in. So I love that message of the future vision. Who do you want to be? And it translates so well for the leaders of today, Jim. I just think this is the missing language in so many companies. So honored to talk about it with you today.
Yeah, thanks. I'll say one thing, because it sounds like your dad gave you a lot of wisdom there, and that was a great lesson as you shared, is that, I believe effective leaders have energy. And so I don't do this talk as much as I do with my other talks, but I talk about some questions you should ask yourself as a leader. And one is, do you have energy? Do you have a personal wellness plan? Are you taking care of, because, you see people that are fit, they're not fit because they exercise once in a while.
Right.
And eat a good meal once in a while. It's, they're taking care of their body. I mean, we all have our, bad days where we eat something really bad or maybe don't exercise that day. But, what you got to really start establishing is some daily practices that you're going to do. A few simple disciplines practice every day is going to lead to those types of things. And the same thing is when, sometimes you might meet a friend that you haven't seen in, 10 years and they've gained 100 pounds. Mm-hmm. That happened because they had a bad meal yesterday. They were consistently not doing consistency. So I think that's a really important thing is if you want energy, you should have a consistent personal wellness plan to take care of that. And the other thing is, making your mind and body sound is having a personal growth plan. How are you getting a little bit better, as we've talked about each day? How are you feeding your mind consistently? Yeah. Those are really important things to think about.
Yeah, I love that. Perfect place to ask about your book and how my listeners can find out more about you and read your book.
Yeah. So, my website's got all of my information on it, coachjimjohnson.com. I'm part of, so one book, myself, and actually he was a former high school classmate, and he's a newspaper writer, and he actually had two sons on the autism spectrum. So it was a really project of love when we wrote the book called A Coach and a Miracle. It still is on Amazon, but more if you want like a signed copy, if you go to coachjimjohnson.com. And then last year I decided to get involved with a multiple projects. I have a chapter called Lessons for Thought Leaders. And actually, the late Jim Rohn, for those of you are Jim Rohn fans, I was a big Jim Rohn fan. His manager his last 20 years was a guy named Kyle Wilson. And Kyle is the one that headed the project. So that was neat. And that one is the Thought Leader, or Lessons from Thought Leaders, is on Amazon, and it's also on my website as well. And if I can ever help you, people go to the website. I have a free newsletter. I do a free weekly blog. And then, I have a bunch of different things on there that are not. And if I can help anyone within one of our programs, whether it's a presentation or some coaching, that kind of thing, I'm always there to try to help people. So,
well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate you being here and having this conversation with me, and appreciate our connection. And thank you for being receptive to a stranger.
Yeah, no, it's great. And you just never know how you can connect with people. And I would do continue to talk in the future, and I'm wishing you continued success.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining me here on another Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Unlock Your Way. I hope you found today's discussion inspiring and you're ready to take your business and personal growth to that next level. If you're feeling as fired up as I am and eager to unlock that full potential, I'm here to help you on your journey and provide that personalized guidance tailored to your unique goals and challenges. Simply book a one-on-one coaching call with me and we'll dive deep into your business aspirations and see how we could co-create a roadmap for your success. And whether you're striving to scale an enterprise or just getting started, I'm here to support you every step of the way. To schedule your coaching call, simply visit the website at unlockyourwaywithstk.com, click on the Book a Call button, and we'll turn your dreams into that reality. Subscribe and review on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. Plus, you can join over 800 entrepreneurs in the Idea Lab Facebook group. Let's make success as an entrepreneur happen together. Until next time, I'm STK. Keep dreaming big, stay focused, and most of all, have fun while you're doing it.
This show is powered by Media Leads. To get your next great podcast produced, go to MediaLeadsCo.com.